It's the Brainerd Planning Commission. Meeting at 6 p.m., Brainerd Council Chambers, and we'll start with roll call.
Higgins.
Here.
Powell.
Here.
Norwood. Peterson.
Here.
Gorham. Grasula.
Here.
Erickson.
Here. All right, moving on, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance.
United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, moving on through the agenda here, we'll be on to the election of officers. And we're in a little bit of a unique situation. We currently don't have a chairperson. Our vice chair is not present. And with that, I'm the council liaison from City Council to the Planning Commission. And so just be looking for a motion for appointing, I guess, myself.
I'll make the motion,
temporary-
Mr. Chair,
temporary chair.
to make you chair for the evening.
Second.
All right, it's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. And motion carries. All right, in addition to that, we would be looking to take nominations for an actual chair, aside from tonight. And Vice Chair Gorman has indicated his desire to be vice chair. He said he would be chair if needed. And Commissioner Norwood has indicated that he would serve as chair as well. So would be entertaining a motion to appoint a chairperson.
I'll make that motion to do as you said.
And for which one? Again, Gorman has,
Mr. Norwood
Okay.
for the chair and Mr. Gorman for the vice chair.
all right, very good.
Second.
All right, a motion and a second. Any other nominations? And a third and final time, any other nominations? Hearing none. But a motion and a second, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. And hearing none, motion carries. All right, well, thank you very much. Next item on the agenda, approval or amendment of agenda. Be looking for a motion to approve or amend the agenda.
Mr. Chair, I would have to recuse myself for new business 8, item D. As it is, I am part of that.
Very good. Thank you. With that, can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. And motion carries. Next up, approval of our minutes of our previous meeting, January 15th, 2025. Need a motion to approve the minutes.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, that brings us to item 8 on our revised agenda, new business. And first on that is consideration of preliminary plat request for St. Francis Church, 411 North 10th Street. And I think Mr. Kramvik is going to be talking.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So the purpose of this preliminary plat request is to consolidate 14 parcels into 3 lots, one each for the church, school, and rectory. The preliminary plat also proposes a street vacation of North 9th Street between Ivy Street and Juniper Street, and the demolition of 3 single-family homes to construct 1 large rectory church. Major reason for the request is to create 1 cohesive campus for children to walk between the school and church. At this time, the preliminary plat indicates that St. Francis would like to rezone to public semi-public district. By rezoning to PSP district, St. Francis would not be required to obtain a conditional use permit to demolish the 3 homes, and they would not be required to obtain a CUP in the future for the rectory or future expansion of the church or school. A CUP is required in the current TN1 district for those uses. So I want to reference section 515-4-14 of the zoning code. This was passed about a year and a half ago. States that no permit shall be issued to allow the demolition of a dwelling unit in the traditional neighborhood 1 district, which this is located in, or the TN2, CN1, CN2 districts, unless a building permit is also issued at the same time to authorize construction or replacement of a dwelling unit, or the city grants a conditional use permit. So the rectory will, as proposed, these are some preliminary drawings, so they're not final drawings, but will contain large suites, but because of the lack of the kitchen in these suites, they do not meet the definition of a dwelling unit. So essentially 3 homes would be going to 1 unit. Staff from multiple departments did meet regarding the proposed street vacation. Engineering and public utilities did not have any issues from a utility, stormwater, or traffic perspective. If vacated, the fire department would require street access to North 9th until the 2 internal homes are demolished. That is something that would be put into a development agreement. As discussed in the findings, the city could potentially add a sidewalk requirement for pedestrian traffic from north to south as part of a development agreement. If it were to be conditioned into the development agreement, staff would need to have final discussions with the city attorney to figure out exactly how this could potentially work. There would be a permanent utility easement in there, but this is private property, so it's something that would have to be worked out in the future. The other option would be to encourage St. Francis to add a sidewalk to allow pedestrian passage still in that area, but not have anything officially conditioned. Staff did review this, whether it is consistent with the comprehensive plan. Economic development goal 1, support infill and redevelopment throughout Brainerd as a strategic component of growth. Policy 2, invest in community improvements that will spur and support revitalization or redevelopment. Investment in neighborhood schools and churches is important for creating community connections, attracting families, and spurring revitalization of surrounding homes. Certainly the community has seen a number of our elementary schools go through revitalization in the last few years here. Housing Goal 1, Policy 3 states rehabilitate and or replace substandard housing with units that are decent, safe, healthy, affordable, and appropriate size to meet the city's current and future housing needs. As proposed, the rectory replaces older homes in need of repairs with a new dwelling unit that meets the needs of parish priests and visitors, according to the applicant. Policy 5, ensure an adequate supply of quality and affordable housing units for current and future residents. Certainly the removal of 3 single-family homes negatively impacts Brainerd's housing stock at a time when there is a major need in the community to provide housing to residents. So taking all things in consideration, staff does recommend approval of the preliminary plat with the following conditions. Approval of the vacation of North 9th Street between Ivy Street and Juniper Street. This would be considered by City Council. Approval of a rezoning of all parcels to public, semi-public district, and approval of the development agreement with the City of Brainerd. And I can answer any questions.
Maybe before we open it up for commissioner questions, James, I just have a process question. So on the agenda here, it talks about, obviously, this item. Under that, it says public hearing. So you can have commissioner questions and directed to you and staff, and then after that, we open up for public hearing. And
That's correct, and then the applicant would typically talk first.
Okay, thank you. So with that, I guess opening up the floor for any commissioner questions on the proposal.
Not yet, not till we hear from some people.
That's fine. Will we have an opportunity after the public hearing for commissioners to also ask questions?
That's correct.
Okay. Yeah, so I guess hearing no further comment, move right into public hearing. All right, so at 6:08, we'll open up the public hearing on considering preliminary plat request for St. Francis Church.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Chad Connor, excuse me, land surveyor with Widseth. I'm going to be representing a portion of the team here tonight. Erica, you want to introduce yourself?
Erica Markison, architect at Widseth.
Father Michael, I'm the pastor of St. Francis.
You want to state full name and address?
Father Michael Gary, 416 North 9th Street, Brainerd.
Erica Markison, 415 Cedar Street, Brainerd.
And I'll go with our Widseth corporate address, 7804 Industrial Park Road in Baxter. Is that all right, staff?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks for having us here tonight. It's, obviously, we're here for a preliminary plat, but obviously there's a lot of other moving parts that are gonna go with that as this process moves forward. So, keeping that in mind, we had some very good meetings. Appreciate the staff's thorough, staff report and analysis. We've met with them a number of times. I know Erica and the rest of the team have met with them for quite a period of time, so it's good to finally get in front of this, commission. With the plat, obviously, is the first step of a master planning effort that we're going through right now, and others can maybe talk about details of that in the future. But as a surveyor, maybe a few things that I would probably like to address during this staff report is in regards to particular the street vacation. Obviously, that's a big component of this. Moving forward with the plat, the platted lots contain what's going to be, or what was the vacated street, and we'll incorporate that into the proposed development in the future. We haven't given any details on that just because simply they're not developed yet to this point. But I can assure you with the team, with the discussions with city staff, with community discussions and input that we've gained, we're looking to improve and maintain that pedestrian connectivity that I think is important to a neighborhood as of this one. Other things that are positives that this is going to provide is additional safety for pedestrians, students crossing back and forth between the facilities, parishioners, and just pedestrians as well. It'll also reduce impervious coverage likely, which is also a good thing for stormwater control and things like that. And if we look around the city, the Harrison School is probably a good example of a situation where we vacated, or a street was vacated, and it brought some really good benefits to the property and the neighborhood. The other thing I'd like to just quickly, briefly talk about would be the rezoning to PSP. And I think if you look through the packet, it was clear to me, and when we met with staff, that the current facilities, the school, the church, the rectory, all fall basically right in the criteria of that PSP district. So one thing that in the staff report, it wasn't mentioned also that to the east, the Franklin Arts Center is a general commercial district too. So there is another zoning district, not just TN1, surrounding the entire property. And then, the rezoning this to PSP would be consistent with other blocks, other uses in this community, such as Trinity School, Brainerd High School, St. Andrews, St. Joe's Medical Center, those types of facilities. So really appreciate everyone's time tonight. I don't know, Erica, if you have anything else to add at this point, or?
I guess maybe we'll just mention at this time and then wait for some additional questions. But with as Chad mentioned, we're in the infancy stages of master planning. We just started that process, and the goal of that process is to figure out what opportunities lie on those parcels of land, and so starting this process will guide us or provide us the foresight of what is possible. If the street vacation is granted, then there's a whole assortment of options, or a broader range of options available of what can be done with the existing school and the church, and then likewise adding the rectory. The current rectory, as it sits now, is utilized. It was a single-family home. It's been converted to a rectory over the years, but really doesn't serve the purpose of what a normal rectory, if I can call normal, of what a rectory would strive to be, I guess, is the best description for that. And so, while they've made do, or we've made do, and I speak also as a parishioner, while we made do, we just want to provide our priests with something that they're deserving of, and have the appropriate living quarters for their type of, and it's not a single family, it's multiple priests that live within that. And so to have those individual kind of living quarters, if I can call them that, to provide them with that would be beneficial. So in talking about the the homes being demolished. The existing homes, as they stand now, with bedroom counts and living spaces, actually equates out to what the proposed rectory is providing. I know it was explained that it's not necessarily looked at as individual living quarters, but the actual spaces, bedrooms, living spaces, equates out to be almost identical to what the three individual single-family homes equate out to. The other amenity that the new rectory would provide is accessibility. We have, obviously, we all age, that's a given. And so with that, having the opportunity to have a facility or a home setting of which is more conducive to that, and providing that for potential having this rectory be an opportunity for the diocese to potentially have even retirement for availability of a priest that may have an accessibility need. And I'll leave it at that for now. You want to add anything?
Maybe I'd just add that, yeah, so there's 3 houses there. Currently, I'm living in one with another priest. And we do anticipate getting more priests. So we would need more room than we have currently in the 2 bedrooms that we have. So we have those 3 houses. So if you want to think of it this way, there's 3 houses, and in the future, it's very likely that the two of the 3 would be taken up by priests anyways. So really we'd be at a net loss of just the 1 house. And the other possibilities that she was talking about was for the school would be starting a high school. So we're also kind of looking down the road on that, which I think would be a benefit and a draw to the community as well.
Thank you. All right, anyone else to speak for or against? And I don't know, do we have anybody online? Okay, so if you're online or joining by phone, if you hit *3, that'll let us know that you'd like to speak. Or anyone else in?
Hello.
Yes, go ahead. State
is-
your name and
Thank you.
address.
This is Mike Duval. Yeah, this is Mike Duval, 468 Tyrol Drive. I believe I had submitted some of my notes to staff yesterday. I don't know if that got distributed or not, but just wanted to just maybe embellish on some of those regarding this project. Specifically for the road vacating the 9th Street. My interpretation of the proposed redevelopment of this in this project doesn't seem to indicate that there will be any structures or infrastructure that's going to be overlay the vacated street corridor, which to me implies that it's not really a requirement for the success of the overall project. I think the applicant just well articulated the need for trying to redevelop some more functional housing, and I totally appreciate that. But it doesn't seem like the street needs to be a part of that going away in order for them to have a successful project. They use the example of the Harrison School as one of those, maybe as a comparable to what they're proposing to do. But I would point out that the vacated street, which was 16th, I believe, 16th Street was vacated, and basically that has infrastructure on it, a stormwater management pond. So it actually has something other than how to manage to get students across the street. 9th Street is on the south end, controlled by a stop sign on the Juniper and 9th intersection. So traffic has to stop at the intersection of Juniper before proceeding north. And so there are other ways you might be able to ensure the safety of students that need to go between the campus, maybe using controls like a pedestrian signal light or placing a stop sign on the north block of 9th at Ivy. So again, you cause traffic to pause, if you would, with generally slowing things down. And I think that would be a reasonable approach here for this particular part. We talked, or they were expressing the need to clear a footprint for the new rectory. And I think staff report indicated that, it acknowledges that we do have a housing shortage within the city and within the county and within the state and within the country. So it's not unique to Brainerd. And the functionality is how they want to use these houses doesn't work. I think that's clear. I think where we come up with the first initiative is to take the houses down to the ground and ship them to the landfill. And I think there's an opportunity here to maybe repurpose these houses. I'm aware of a couple of projects that have happened in the near past here in Brainerd when the hospital expanded parking lots and things. I'm aware of one house that was moved up to Lake Hubert, so a pretty long haul. That house was set down and is very functional and continues on as a home, and it was an affordable option. There was another house that was scheduled for demolition in the Lowell School as part of the expansion of parking, and that house was moved 8 blocks to the east and set down and renovated and is now a functioning house. So you don't necessarily have a full net loss of housing if we offer these houses, particularly at no cost to interested individuals. There are going to be necessary steps to deal with things like asbestos and such before these houses are demolished, and that to me doesn't seem like it would be a pass-along cost, but it's an option to be able to put these houses to continue good use. I provided a couple of pictures in my submission, and we could look at some by just going to the county website Street View, but these are nice houses. There's no question about it. They're interesting architecturally. They're not dilapidated or blighted. So they're really nice, and there's an opportunity here especially with the 30% plus increase in the cost of housing that we've experienced over the past 3 some odd years. This could be an affordable and an attractive option for would-be homeowners that have the opportunity, a parcel of land they want to set a house on. It's going to save you some construction cost and maybe bypass some of the lining up of contractors to stick build something. If you've got, we've got several house movers in the Brainerd Lakes area here that do this for a living, and they could scope these out and figure out. I think you would have a very affordable house if you picked it up and moved it to a lot. So I guess my recommendation would be that you allow enough time for interested individuals to contact and line up logistics if they would want to pluck one of these off before you actually crush them in and send them to the landfill. And as a further option, if there are no interested parties, the Habitat for Humanities does have salvage crews that would be able to repurpose a lot of the unique architectural features, I'm sure, in each of these houses. I've not been in them. But there's demand for those sorts of things, and that would, the proceeds of that go to support housing development, affordable housing development, so it stays in tune or in theme with what we're lacking or have a need for in the city. And so I think those are a couple of thoughts on here. If I could loop back to the
Very good.
street vacating.
Mr. Duvall, thank you very much. We got a full room here. I'll give you 30 seconds to maybe just the final thought, please.
Thank you. So looking back to the vacation of the street, I drove by there on Saturday. There was a function going on there at the church or at the school. I don't know which, but it was a full street on Saturday morning, 10 o'clock. There were 20 some odd cars on the street. So you're losing some on-street parking there that then has to go someplace else in the neighborhood. And so with that, thank you very much for the opportunity to comment.
You bet. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, can I
sir.
ask a question of these guys?
Is that tip, we want to hold those off until after the public hearing typically?
Let's hold off until everybody's maybe had a chance to speak.
Thank you.
Carla Coonan, 1117 Broadway Street. I'm the Director of Advancement and Admissions from the school. And just to comment on his question about the authenticity of vacating this street, I think Mrs. Markison spoke very articulately that this is a preliminary process that we are looking. We are outgrowing our space at the school, let alone the project that the rectory is too. And so this is giving us the opportunity to look at what our options are. This is what can we do with the space that we have to use it to the best that we can as good stewards of the land that we have been given. So I just want to comment that this isn't something that we're looking at just for vacating a street to inconvenience someone. It's also looking at the best plan for this property for both our parish and our school. So that's just my comment to the gentleman who gave his opinion.
Thank you.
And I support this, obviously.
Anyone else for or against? State your name and address, please.
Chris Denz, 4784 Gull Lake Dam Road in Brainerd. I am in favor of this proposal. I was looking at some stuff and kind of reviewing the packet beforehand. One of the things the other gentleman was talking about, I had very similar questions on it, like, why are we just going to demolish these houses? Why don't you donate them to Habitat? So I emailed some of the guys, and their response was that they had already made a few calls to Habitat, and that they looked at the houses and said, no, it's probably just worth coming in to strip out some of the parts, strip out some of the copper. They said they had already reached out to some home movers in the area and weren't interested in moving. They had one person that was maybe interested in Hewitt, but that it was too far to relocate because of power lines and other stuff. So I know they were looking into things to try and reuse those houses. But my understanding is they're not in that great a shape, but that we'll try and reuse what they can. My thoughts, I got my kid here with me today, and just looking at, future stuff as far as things that make me excited about Brainerd when they're talking about things that are, you hear about them outgrowing their space, and it sounds like they got a lot of good community and support. I'm a parishioner over at All Saints, since I live around that side of the town, but we bring our kids and family over to St. Francis a lot too. They have a lot of good things going there, and there's a lot of momentum behind them, so I'm excited to see some support for their mission and their stuff going on. My take on the street, I think it would be great to have it vacated, just from the standpoint of looking at where they're trying to develop.
Is he speaking for or against?
If they're going to basically have, church-related stuff for the campuses on both sides of the street, to me it makes a lot of sense to merge that into one. There's already a lot of, crisscross hatching throughout the city. And growing up here and going to Gregory Park, which is all kind of one solid place, they could have put streets right through there, but there's not a lot of places that have a street vacated that have a larger parcel feel. I think that could add a lot of value for another larger facility, room for larger green space, and something that's already a lot of crisscross streets. I think vacating the street would leave room for other possibilities. I haven't been part of the planning process or know a lot about it, but, I would speculate that some of the plans of why there's not things to develop is they don't know if it's approved yet. As soon as they know they might have approval for possibilities to vacate the street, they might be able to come up with some more interesting designs that could further enrich the community. So I would be in favor of vacating the street. I think it'll give it a good kind of campus feel. You go to a lot of other colleges and universities in other locations, and again, turning into foot traffic. There's not a lot of foot traffic on these spaces, and I think it'd be a good thing for Brainerd. So thank you.
Thank you. Others for or against? Name and address, please.
Angie Gottich, 902 First Street, which is actually 3 blocks north of this, right on the corner of 9th and Fur. I would state that I'm in favor of vacating the property. We are right at the southeast corner of 9th and Fir. There is a stop sign there. That's the only other regulated stop sign on that street. And so we watch out our window all day long, and probably 85 to 95% of the people that come by that stop sign do not stop as it is. There is excessive speed in that neighborhood. And so I would like to see, if it was vacated, then the traffic would reroute to 8th Street where it should be going, and because there's a lot of the traffic that heads to northeast Brainerd from that route. And as a secondary, in support of this project, my son is a seminarian, and one of the parts of their formation is they want them, when they come home, they want them to spend time with the priests. So he has actually slept on the couch in their rectory now because there's not room where they have it now, so I just wanted to add that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, any others for or against?
Good evening. My name's Kevin Yeager. I live at 325 Bluff, and thanks for having me. Appreciate what you guys do. Highly criticized, underappreciated work. So, since the beginning of Euclidean design, city planners have understood that neighborhoods are some of our most valuable assets inside cities. And for that reason, Euclidean design states that neighborhoods are made up primarily, if you look at all 99% of city planners will tell you that neighborhoods are made up of churches, parks, homes, and those neighborhood type dwellings. I support that. I believe in that. That is also why almost all planning and zoning design standards are the most restrictive in these neighborhoods. I believe 100% fully that our campuses of churches and schools and parks inside neighborhoods should expand. I believe in high density, and I believe that they should increase their worth inside those neighborhoods. I'm opposed to them doing that in a horizontal fashion that gobbles up the very neighborhood in which they survive, in which they make their living, in which they call home, in which they share the greater neighborhood with their neighbors. So I'm here tonight, and I want to be careful to mention that I'm not opposed to churches. I'm certainly not opposed to churches expanding. I'm not opposed to the need. I support the growth. What I want to be heard tonight, or what I'm hoping that I can impress upon you is that planners and designers and architects, they come up with this, they have a client who sits in front of them and says, these are our boxes that we need checked. We need this and this and this and this and this. And by their own nature, to their credit, they tend to find a path that checks those boxes with a method that provides the least amount of resistance. And I think that is a very dangerous process in some cases. So what I'm hoping to impress upon you tonight is that they are here asking for input, and I would like to at least open the conversation that, in general, when we say we need to expand, we think this way. The reality is that almost everything that we want to do with the expansion of campuses and institutions can also be done this way if we just tell them that's the way we want them to go. Is it harder? Absolutely. Is it more expensive? Absolutely. However, the benefit to that type of mindset is that it preserves those institutions, those dwellings that are around those institutions that we're asking to expand or hoping to expand. So I'm simply asking you guys to just kind of think or maybe provide some input that says, show us some other alternatives that don't cost us the houses. Show us some other alternatives that don't cost us vacating a street that's been there. These houses, when they're gone forever. We can see many, many examples of that in our neighborhoods. The hospital, our school district 181, 3 houses here, 2 houses there, 4 houses there. The cumulative effect of that over time is that the campuses and institutions continue to grow, and the houses, the people that live in them get smaller and smaller and smaller. That is my concern on a long-term scale of this type of mindset of design thinking. So I'm just asking you guys to think about maybe giving them some input or asking them to show other designs that might embrace both mindsets. I also want to say that Planning Commission and the City Council made it very clear that we don't want houses torn down in neighborhoods. The switching of the zoning is a circumvention of that exact mindset. It then gives them the ability, if they can rezone it, to then legally, through a CUP, tear down those houses, which is basically it's a way of just kind of working around the impetus of that original design concept that we said we wanted to have in our neighborhoods. So in closing, I just want to say I fully support the church. I want them to grow. I want them to expand. I want them 5 times the size they are now. I just want them to do it in a way that protects the neighborhoods and the houses around them in the long term. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, any others to speak for or against? Name and address, please.
Hi, excuse me, Ginny Knutson on 12319 Thompson Road, Brainerd. I also am one of the owners of the Bordensteinbauer, Kruger and Knutson office across the street. Lifelong resident of Brainerd. I'm also one of the trustees at St. Francis Church and the chair of the Finance Council. I want to thank a lot of our parishioners. We've got probably at least a dozen parishioners here in support. Want to share with the commission, Mr. Chair, that our parishioners have been very enthusiastic about the plans that we have moving forward for this. And I can assure the commissioners that we have, as a finance council with Father Gary, been studying different ideas and thoughts about the campus, especially the rectory, for over 3 years. We understand the concerns about housing in the city of Brainerd. The housing there is going to be church housing. It's not going to be housing for single families, as Father Gary had pointed out. Our church is growing. We have over 800 families. We've got a school that's bursting at the seams. This seems to be the perfect opportunity for the city to look at this whole area, to apply that zoning district that is appropriate for these sorts of growing kind of quasi-commercial areas. Again, as it was pointed out, it is adjacent to the Franklin Arts Center. On behalf of all of the parishioners at St. Francis, we ask that the commission approve this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, any others like to speak for and against? And seeing no one else, maybe I'll call a final time. Any others to speak for or against? All right, hearing none, I'll close the public hearing at 6:37. And James, I know there's been some requests for questions from commissioners, so perhaps we can open it back up to commissioners for questions, comments, and discussions. So.
I'd have one actually for the architects. I think 1 minute answer. I got like 4 of them I'm going to fire at you. What's their ultimate time frame if they got this? I'm assuming the church owns these 3 properties right now. And are they rentals? Does someone else own them? What is the housing? How are they being used as housing right now? And when you're vacating 9th Street, I'm assuming you're using this for the future for the school and things like that. That's the reasoning behind that, and that will be green space. I just wanted to understand that. That's the questions.
Okay, able to come back up and maybe speak to those or address those questions?
All right. You rambled them off quick. I got 3 of the 4, so I'll figure out which one I missed. Time frame, that really isn't, that's an unknown at this time. Again, as I mentioned, we're in the early stages of master planning, and until we know the outcome of what is possible with the street vacation and the rezoning, that guides us and provides us some guidance as to what possibilities there are. So unfortunately, I can't give you a specific time frame. Obviously, with the school and the growth to include and incorporate high school grade levels, because right now, currently, St. Francis School goes to grade 8. And so there's been, over the past 3-4 years now, there's been some further discussions and studies done as far as how to support and grow that higher grade level at St. Francis. So there is, we're looking to try to accomplish something or have some improvements made to the school sooner than possibly the church, since the church just went through an addition renovation a couple years back here. So I guess, again, I can't give you a specific time frame, but that's just kind of a little bit of information as far as what we've been looking at. The church does currently own all 3 of the parcels, the northwest corner, the middle home, and then the home that's directly north of the church is currently the rectory, the home that serves as the rectory. I think number 3 was the one that I missed, because 4 talks about the vacation. You inquired about the street vacation. And as I tried to allude to earlier, again, we're in the early stages of the master planning. And maybe I can touch on this because I know also I made a note and answer both Mike Duval's comment and to your question as well. So the growth to increase the size of the school, we have looked at options, not to just sprawl, and we're just, again, in the early stages. So, but to go from a K-8 to a pre-K 12, and actually I should say a pre-K 8 to a pre-K 12, requires almost double the amount of square footage that this existing school currently houses. And so while our goal would be to try to create as tight of a footprint as possible, there are certain code regulations as far as what needs to happen with the earlier grade levels and where they fall within the building. So those are all considerations that we'll need to make. My goal as an architect is to try to always better our community to the best of our abilities. And so we would strive to try to tighten that footprint up as much as possible.
Thank you.
Did that answer your questions?
It did.
Which one did I miss, though?
Well, they were kind of ran together. I was wondering what the usage of the houses were right now. If
Okay.
we're literally missing housing stock because of it, but it doesn't sound like it to me if they go away.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? I imagine there'd be a lot of discussion on this. Questions of staff? Yeah, please.
Yes, James, do you know approximately how many housing units were short in Brainerd?
I do not know that offhand. It's something that I would have to get at a later date.
All right, any other questions, comments? I've got several for staff. If I could just maybe kind of tick down my list here. James, so concerning the vacation of North and 9th Street, public utilities, what do we have under there? Water, wastewater, sewer, and are there concerns from BPU about, the 40-plus homes north of Ivy Street that are served by that road?
So I'll add the first part on that one. So if it were to be vacated, really the only thing it could be would be green space. There would be potential for a sidewalk, parking, but if there had to be some type of utility project on there, it would be at the cost of the property owner to put that back into place. So buildings cannot be put over the utility easement. I know in meetings with Trent from BPU, one of the requirements, if it were to be vacated, the service lines over to the homes would have to be brought back to the stub line. So that was one of their main concerns from that perspective. I'll let Jesse answer the other questions.
So to your point, there are a handful of different utilities. There's power, water, and storm sewer that run through, and they are kind of spread through that entire right-of-way, which is why we did request that we would retain essentially the entire 80-foot as a utility easement through there. So to James's point, we would require that there wasn't a structure placed upon that easement, but you could put parking lot, green space upon that easement, and maintain it as such. But beyond that, to remove that easement, you'd have to relocate those utilities, and that would be on the property owner's expense.
Okay, thank you. Similarly, thinking about fire, did the fire department have any concerns, comments, feedback on
Yeah, so they were at that meeting as well. North Ninth would have to remain open if it were to be vacated until the kind of the two homes that are in the interior portion were demolished. So that would have to be something that's part of the development agreement, whether they're being occupied or unoccupied. And that was their comment.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Just a couple other, and I've been rolling this over in my mind all week as I was reviewing the packet. And, you know, I think it's a really neat project. You know, you're kind of hitting on the two things that the city is kind of sensitive issues that, as you've heard, the housing and, of course, the street vacation. I do see a couple of the comments that were made about kind of the comprehensive plan, zoning ordinance. I do see this proposal a little bit differently, as opposed to circumventing. You know, when we rewrote the zoning ordinance 2022, we wrote it in such a way to create flexibility. And so instead of maybe circumventing, I see it more as providing some flexibility for residents, institution, business owners to accomplish things. So with that said, the street vacation I am very hesitant on, just from, that's an asset of the city's. That's an investment that we make, a long-term investment that the city has made. And so to give up a portion of a street, I think we need to proceed extremely cautiously and slowly on that. Maybe a process question, James. You know, tonight we're considering the preliminary plat. Mixed into that plat is the street vacation. Are we able to kind of separate that street vacation from?
So from a street vacation perspective, certainly there could be concerns, you know, pros or cons from the planning commission. Certainly the applicant should hear it, and the city council should hear it. So separately, the city council would consider the vacation of the street, but planning commission, you know, should weigh considerations on, again, on-street parking. They should weigh considerations on access with vehicle traffic through there, access for pedestrians with that. Those are things that, certainly things that the planning commission should consider with this plat.
I guess to that point, do we have, I guess, numbers on that, traffic counts on that, or pedestrian counts? I don't know that you've had that maybe off the top of your head, but is that something we have or could get?
We don't have traffic and pedestrian counts on that block. This is a pretty low volume street in comparison to some of the adjacent streets like North 8th, which we do have counts on. Most of the volume is going to be related to the church and school.
All right. Any other questions, comments? You know, I'm only one member of council, but I think there's going to be some hesitancy on the street vacation at council level, so applicants should, of course, hear that. But as far as planning commission, the request before us here is to, staff recommendation is to approve the vacation of North 9th Street between Ivy Street and Juniper. Second, James, just a procedural question. Is this all one motion that you're looking for this, or would it, can we?
Staff's recommendation was for one motion. Certainly, it could be a different motion than what staff's recommendation was. Potential other conditions can be added. There's only certain conditions that can be added to plat, so you certainly could ask those questions if you're asking to add a condition, but they could all be one motion.
And did I understand you correctly that whether planning commission approves or denies this, that city council would be taking up the vacation, or only if we approve?
This is only a recommending body, so this is a recommendation to city council for the preliminary plat. City council could certainly agree with what the recommendation was from the planning commission, or not agree and not approve it or approve it.
Sure, okay. Thanks for all the, sorry for the rapid fire questions. But.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
can I make a motion
certainly can.
to approve the preliminary plat
There's been a motion.
has been presented?
A motion, is there a second?
Second.
All right, a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Oh, sorry.
Does that include the conditions? Just want to clarify.
Yes, it does.
Okay. So motion and a second. Any other discussion? All right, those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you. We will be moving on with our agenda. You're welcome to stay, but if that's the item you're here for, you're welcome to leave as well.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is consider rezoning and zoning text amendment for Paradigm Auto, 310 West Laurel Street. And, oh, we're gonna give a couple minutes here. Thank you. We'll take a moment to let the room clear. All right. Thank you. Moving on with our agenda, 8B, consider rezoning and zoning text amendment for Paradigm Auto, 310 West Laurel Street, and Community Development Director Kramvik.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Al Schmidt has submitted a request to rezone the property at 310 West Laurel Street to Makers and Employment Zoning District and for a zoning text amendment to allow for the operation of U-Haul vehicles / rental businesses in the Makers and Employment Zoning District. The property is currently in violation as U-Haul trucks are illegally parked and stored on unimproved surfaces. In addition, there are too many U-Haul rental units at the property. The applicant did come to City Council to kind of discuss some of those issues and was directed to work with staff in an appropriate amount of time. He did submit the application in that appropriate amount of time, so I did want to note that as well. U-Haul and vehicle rentals currently fall under section 515-3-29, which is outdoor storage, sale, and rental. In staff's opinion, this probably is more for equipment rental rather than cars or U-Haul rentals. But it does currently fall under that, and based on the building size of the property, it would allow 1,140 square feet of outside area, which essentially equates to 7 parking spaces. Certainly there's a need from the applicant to have more spaces than that. The property is located in the Shoreland District, and the proposed parking lot would remain under the 25% impervious surface requirement required by code in the Shoreland District. Noted in there, the DNR did review it, had no issues with this current request here, but as we'll discuss later in the itinerary, we do need to update our Shoreland District ordinance. As part of the rezoning, the council shall consider if the proposed uses are to be compatible with present, future land uses of the area. The proposed zoning and use are compatible with other surrounding uses as it abuts a railroad property, which is industrial, commercial in nature. The property does not directly abut other Makers and Employment zoning districts. However, the primary Makers and Employment district in Brainerd is just kind of north of it, between Charles Street and the railroad, just kind of off to the side of where this property is located. Also, the proposed use's effect on the area in which it is proposed. The proposed use will not have an adverse effect on the area as vehicle repair services are legal and have been operating for a number of years in the current location. Requiring the applicant to pave the parking area will enhance the neighborhood rather than just kind of the dust or class 5 surface that currently is there. The current business and proposed U-Haul expansion will not impact traffic on Laurel Street. Staff has not received any complaints about traffic as it's been currently operating. The last part is the proposed use's impact on existing public service and facilities, including parks, schools, streets, and utilities, and its potential to overburden city service capacity. The proposed use will not have an impact on existing public services. So with that, the Community Development Department does recommend approval of the rezoning and zoning text amendment for 310 West Laurel with the following conditions. The paving project must be completed by July 31st of 2025. I guess I missed, Sean, do you want to pull up the ordinance? So I'll just go through that quickly here. Pretty similar to what would be allowed if you want to scroll down a little bit further. Right here. So this would be the added language or potential added language to an ordinance. So similar to what we have for vehicle sales, this would be more of a vehicle and trailer rental. So the difference between this and the outdoor storage is the outdoor storage requires screening and fencing, where kind of the commercial sales of vehicles would not require that. So that's really kind of the nuance to this one. Parking area shall be physically defined on site by surfacing which the applicant is proposing. Parking area shall be set back 3 feet from all property lines. That's part of our off-street parking code, so we have to ensure that. All lighting shall be downhood and downcast, so the light is not visible from the public right-of-way. That's in our in other sections of code, as well as a lighting ordinance. And then it must be paved with either asphalt or concrete, which the applicant is proposing. And then if you want to head down to the last section, staff is proposing for this to be permitted in the general commercial makers and employment and general and district zoning districts, and then it would be a commercial or a conditional use in the commercial corridor district, just because it's kind of tighter properties in that area. So with that, I can answer any questions.
All right, thanks, James. Kind of the same process as the last one, but any comments, questions of staff? With this, similarly, we're moving into public hearing as well. All right. All right, hearing no questions, comments, we'll move into public hearing regarding considering rezoning and zoning text amendment for Paradigm Auto, 310 West Laurel Street at 655. Speaking for or against, state your name and address, please.
Al Schmidt, 11573 River Vista Drive, Baxter. I am the owner of Triaxis LLC. It's a little bit incorrect up there because as of the first of the year, I actually sold Paradigm Automotive to Pat. So this affects him just as much as it affects me as the owner of the business. The only thing that I saw up there that I asked for possibly, and not necessarily a sticky situation, but the July 31st is going to be contingent upon what I can find or who is available to do the asphalt at the time. And as we all know, come this springtime, it's going to be just crazy out there with the road construction and everything. I want to get it done before the end of the summer, definitely, because next year, the traffic count going in front of that business is going to be absolutely astronomical with the Washington Street Bridge project going on. So I've got to have it done this summer. And I'm just asking that we can keep that July 31st in there, but if something comes up where I find that I can't get somebody to come in there and do the pavement on there until, say, August, that I would have a little bit of leniency by going to the council and just saying, hey, I've got it scheduled for this date type deal. That's all I'm really asking for, and just open to questions.
Okay, thank you. I don't know that we have any questions at this time, but we certainly might, so. Thank you. Any others for or against? Of course, name and address.
My name is Patrick Metzler. Address is 1411 South 7th Street, Brainerd, Minnesota. As Al alluded to, as of the first of the year, I purchased Paradigm Automotive from him. In terms of what I've been hearing tonight, of course, bringing people back to Brainerd or bringing people into Brainerd is a crucial part of what we look for from the zoning. Removing us having the ability to service people via rental of U-Haul, the next closest place is Baxter. If they don't have it, then you're going to Pequot for it, or Crosby or Aiken. There just unfortunately isn't a lot of rental business allowing for people to move their houses, certainly within Brainerd city limits, let alone within our greater area. So I think that's a very important thing to consider when we're listening and thinking about this. That being said, both Al and I are of the mindset that we want our property to look as good as it possibly can and be as presentable as it possibly can. Obviously, having a paved parking lot is going to improve the appearance of the building, as well as make it easier to get in and out of, and make it safer for people in general, as there is a fairly good amount of walking traffic in front of that. If we have a defined parking space, that'll certainly help to keep people walking on the defined walking path, not cutting through multiple parking lots to cut off an intersection that we currently have. Other than that, I really don't have anything. So,
Thank you.
thank you guys for hearing us.
You bet. Any others to speak for or against the rezoning or text amendment for Paradigm Auto? And then anyone online wishing to speak for or against, *3, that'll let us know you're
Yes.
wishing to speak. Go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Chair, this is Mike Duval, 468 Tyrell Drive. If you could project the proposed change to the zoning code.
I think we can do that.
It struck me that there was a difference in the lighting standard from the outdoor lighting in the ordinance, and I wonder if specifically 515.4.8 subdivision E of the outdoor lighting standard for makers and employment prescribes a different standard than I saw as far as the light coming off of the parking lots into adjoining areas. So C on that subpart C of the proposed language. The visibility in the outdoor lighting standard is at 5 feet of height at the nearest property line. So this would be creating, it looks to me like a different standard than what's in the outdoor lighting ordinance for makers and employment. So just if that's the intention, that it's going to create a different standard, that's for discussion, but right now it looks to be different than what our lighting ordinance says, so thank you.
Okay, thank you, and I know typically we don't do a back and forth during a public hearing, but James, can you touch on that?
Yeah, so this was from another part of the allowed use section, so maybe this is kind of scattered throughout there. So I took it from a different part of a different use within the allowed use section. I think we could probably just remove it and you'd just be upheld to the lighting standard in the zoning code.
Sure. Okay, thank you. Still in public hearing, any other comments for or against? Seeing and hearing none, one more call. Those for or against, hearing none, close public hearing at 7:01. And then, of course, yeah, James.
Yeah, I had one other comment on the potential condition, something along the lines, if Planning Commission wanted to recommend it, would be that the date is still July 31st, but with an added condition that can be extended per council action without having to come back for a CUP amendment.
Okay. Yeah, that was actually, well, I had a couple comments, but that was one of my notes that I jotted down for those same reasons. We have a late winter, who knows what's gonna happen, into May, and I don't know that industry fully, but, I could see July 31st being a tight deadline potentially, so I like that potential.
And my thought process through that, I'm sure, council with taking this issue on probably wants to see it get done, but certainly contracting with someone, if they say they can't get it done, I think that'd be a good condition to add to it.
Great. Other comments, questions? I just want to make one other comment too, is, going back, we mentioned the zoning code updated 2022. I remember this property came up at that time when when it got initially placed into that town center zoning. And there was some pretty good debate on whether it should be in or out. So, with it being located right next to the railroad tracks, there's some other adjacent similar uses and types. So I think that this, I would support the recommendation. So with that, I guess, any other comments? Otherwise, looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve with the conditions placed. And James going forward with the city council for an extended date if needed.
And then would you also like to remove, it'd be section C of that with the lighting portion?
Yes.
Great. So motion with, amendments. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, motion and a second. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. And of course, motion carries. All All right, thank you. Moving on with our agenda. Item C, consider conditional use permit and variance for Sweet Properties LLC, 324 5th Street South. And with this one, we'll kind of follow the same procedure and turn it over to Community Development Director James Krambick to set this up for us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A conditional use permit was requested by the applicant to add 2 additional residential apartment units on the second floor for a total of 3 units, while maintaining the existing commercial space on the first floor. Also, a variance request from the landscape requirements in the Town Center District for trees and shrubs. So the property is in the Town Center District. Zoning Ordinance Appendix A Table of Uses allows for multifamily attached dwelling units as a conditional use permit in the TC District. The applicant is proposing the addition of 2 units, one a 2-bedroom and then a 3-bedroom as well. Both units meet the size requirements of the zoning code. Requirements for granting a conditional use permit. The proposed use shall produce a total visual impression and environment which is consistent with the environment of the neighborhood. So as required by section 515-4-2 of the design standards, exterior building materials, multifamily dwelling units shall be designed to create visual interest through a variety of materials, colors, textures, installation direction, structural elements such as balconies, porches, and wall patterns, or other characteristics that create articulation either between units or floors. Staff did view the property, went over to it and viewed it. The existing building does have alternative siding patterns between windows and the stucco, and I believe it has recently been painted. It does appear to be in good condition. However, it's kind of in the eye of the beholder. Does the building meet the visual interest standard? Staff does recommend that no additional conditions should be added since it is an existing building that is maintained well and does technically have the alternate siding patterns. The proposed use shall also organize vehicle access and parking to minimize traffic congestion in a residential neighborhood. Again, this is kind of a commercial/partly residential neighborhood, but as indicated in the parking section, this site will have the necessary parking spaces and there should be no increases in traffic congestion. Moving on to the variance request, general landscaping improvement standard states that 4 shrubs shall be planted per dwelling unit. So anytime you're adding to a unit like this, you'd have to meet the code. Variances may be granted when the applicant for the variance establishes that there are practical difficulties in complying with the zoning ordinance, and the plight of the landowner is due to circumstances unique to the property, not created by the landowner. So this building has existed for a number of years on the property, and then also one of the biggest limiting factors is that it has a 0-foot setback kind of on all sides of the building, so it's not really conducive to landscaping enhancements. And another portion of that is the request can't be done because of economic considerations. So with that, the Community Development Department recommends approval of the conditional use permit and variance requests for 324 South 5th Street, and I can answer any questions.
Thanks, James. Questions, comments of commissioners? Hearing none. If not, be looking for a motion.
Public hearing.
Oh, I'm sorry. Jumped the gun. With that then, yeah, so same thing, if there's any questions, but I guess everyone wants to hear what the public has to say. So 7:07, we will open public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak for or against? And this one, again, is a consideration of conditional use and variance for Sweet Properties LLC, 324 5th Street South. Of course, same goes for anyone online. You know by now, *3 if you'd like to speak. And a third and final call, anyone wishing to speak for or against. And hearing none, we'll call the public hearing to a close at 7:08 and bring it back to the commission for questions or comments. Hearing none, looking for a motion.
Move to approve.
Got a motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All right. Those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. And motion carries. All right. Brings us to 8D. Consider preliminary and final plat for Three-Peat LLC, 15770 Delwood Drive.
I'm going to recuse myself. I'm part of this.
Very good.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the purpose of this request is to create a common interest community done through the preliminary plat and final plat, and they can be done at the same time. Just as a reminder for this property, a conditional use permit to construct a mini cell storage facility was issued on 2/21 of 23. The applicant began site work in 2023, and the building permit was issued in 24 here to start the construction. Building 1, located on the north end, is in the process of construction. The applicant was required to update the structural plans to include firewalls between units to allow for additional uses other than mini storage. The CIC plat will allow each unit to be sold to individual property owners for a variety of uses. The proposed use shall preserve the objectives of this ordinance and shall be consistent with the comprehensive plan. Economic Development Goal 3, help local businesses grow and attract new businesses. Policy 2 states to attract new businesses best suited for the community's assets, increasing local employment options and building the city's tax base. Number 3 is to encourage entrepreneurs to start their own businesses. So with this, the proposed project allows new businesses and entrepreneurs to start small in their privately owned spaces. Small businesses in this proposed common interest development are far better for the city's tax base, as well as allowing for those entrepreneurs to start a business and grow compared to storage units. And then also allowing for the expanded use, certainly beneficial. The site is physically suitable for the proposed density of the development. The site and stormwater plans were designed by Widseth. They were included in the packet. The site stormwater and erosion control plans met the requirements of the city code and was approved by the city engineer. The development does not have a significant amount of off-street parking spaces other than what is in front of each unit. Staff does recommend that the common interest agreement includes a provision that prohibits parking on Delwood Drive. Delwood Drive really isn't suited for parking on the street and is a street that actually Baxter is in control of. Also, the potential updated use has been reviewed by the building official and fire marshal. Those two employees, along with myself, sat down with the applicant, and it stated in the agreement under uses, no changes in the use of the property shall be made without prior receipt of all appropriate governmental approvals and shall be consistent with the zoning regulations on the property. So if somebody were to propose a use in there, they would have to have it obviously run by the community development department, the building official, and the fire marshal. If there's a use within the industrial zoning district that's permitted, be essentially talking mainly with the building official and fire marshal to make sure it's okay. Any conditional use that would potentially go into one of those units would go through the same process that any other applicant would have in an industrial zone district. So with that, staff does recommend approval of the preliminary and final plat with the following conditions. A provision is added to the declaration of covenants, conditions, restrictions, and easements to restrict parking on Delwood Drive. And I can answer any questions.
All right, thanks again, James. Questions, comments of commissioners? All right, hearing none, I'll move into public hearing. We'll open the public hearing at 7:12. And anyone wishing to speak for or against? Again, considering preliminary and final plat for 3Pete LLC, 15770 Delwood Drive. And anyone online wishing to speak for or against?
Mr. Chair,
Yes. Oh. Is he? Okay, go ahead and hit *6. Unfortunately, you got muted somehow.
thank you.
Okay, you're,
There you go, thank you.
we can hear you, go ahead.
Yeah. Great, Mr. Chair, thank you. I want to speak in favor of this proposal with the addition of specific information in the covenants regarding the maintenance of the septic and the well system. Any other place in the city would you beyond the BPU services which are taken care of for you, but in this instance, there's no service for those features there, so it just needs to be, it would be important to have that specified, because septic pumping, well testing for coliform bacteria, those things tend to fall off of your vision and not at top of the mind, particularly if you're a tenant in there. Those are things that, you know, if the toilet flushes, everything's good, and it may not be, or the water is cold when it comes out of the tap. So specifying a schedule here that can provide guidance to anybody there, plus future managers. I suspect that Mr. Peterson would already, or his partners or whatever, would already be on top of this, but it's sort of having in those documents for future property managers. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I have you repeat just what specifically you were asking to have added there? I know you said and described it, but one more time.
To the covenants themselves, just specificity. So adding a specific maintenance schedule for septic and wells. So, you know, there are best practices out there for these that, for example, you inspect your septic every 3 years. You know, testing of wells is sort of less specific, but the point being to have specific language in there, and you could turn to the applicant perhaps for what a reasonable schedule is here, because it's going to vary based on the use and how many tenants you have, and if it's a lot of customers versus an office. Okay?
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Does that help?
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other comments for or against? All right, hearing none. We'll close the public hearing at 7:15. And James, you had a comment or question?
I had a thought with that. Possible condition to add would be that the applicant works with staff to add a provision for septic compliance and water inspections.
Sure. Okay. Thank you. All right, well then bringing it back to commission for comments, questions. One more call. Hearing none, I just wanted to say I think it's a really neat proposal. I had a chance to talk with James about it before the meeting, and I think that it's almost like a mixed use for mini storage. So it provides a lot of unique opportunities. So again, I think it's a testament to the unique flexibility kind of written into the zoning code that we've got. So very neat to see. So unless there's any other questions, comments, we'd be entertaining a motion.
Move to approve.
All right, thank you. A motion to approve with, is that with?
So there's one attached condition, and then I did mention a possible added condition.
With this one provision as written in the staff recommendation.
I guess I'm going to move to approve without that condition.
Okay.
Being as Baxter manages that street, I think they can manage the no parking signs on that street if they need to.
Thank you. And then what about the potential addition of the septic?
And that would be up to the commission if they'd like to add that recommendation to it. In our code, I believe it states that new construction has 5 years for septic compliance, and then 3 years after that. I think that's typical. Anytime that there's a permit pulled or a conditional use permit pulled, that's something that we do have to, check on that side of things. I don't believe we have any things about well testing in there.
Okay, that's fine. Just clarifying the motion. So, motion. Is there a second? All right, motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign, and motion carries. All right, thank you very much. We're back at full strength, and that brings us to item number 9, unfinished business. 9A, discuss data center ordinance, and Development Director Krambeck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Planning Commission is very close to kind of finalizing this ordinance here. There's a few items in the actual ordinance, John, if you want to pull it up, that I've highlighted. First one was, there was concern about how many days that they'd be required to produce a sound study if there's issues from City Council. So staff did recommend adding a condition that says, or show proof they have contracted with a third-party engineer and the results will be available in a reasonable amount of time. So that's a potential addition to add because there were concerns from the last meeting. Also a section for the water and wastewater plan. Prior to approval, the developer shall submit a water and wastewater plan for review by the Public Works Department and Public Utilities Department. This was brought up as well. I do think that this is probably beneficial. I know it was discussed at the last one, is there too much in this ordinance regarding this, and BPU could handle this. This is really just a checks and balance to make sure that they're coming to Planning Commission when they're fully ready and not coming to Planning Commission before everything's been fully vetted by the Public Utilities Commission. So this is kind of standard with certain other types of things. So staff does recommend adding this provision. The last one is energy standards. Data center operations shall be required to develop or purchase sufficient renewable energy to offset a certain percentage of the electricity consumed by the operation. Didn't really have a clear understanding of where this ordinance was going to go on the last one. No, there's some discussions about essentially just meeting Brainerd Public Utilities plans for it. The staff kind of looks at it from the perspective that they're going to be negotiating the power with Brainerd Public Utilities, and Brainerd Public Utilities has to meet those standards anyway. So this one might be something that wouldn't have to be in there, but certainly Planning Commission, could put different language in here. We do have the director of Brainerd Public Utilities here to answer questions if you do have any on the energy portion.
Thank you, James. Any comments, questions of commissioners?
Mr. Chair? I would like to remove the F. I mean, literally, we know nothing about energy where we have the gentleman over here. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense for us to even kind of go that route, I believe. So that's more of a comment, my comment than anything. So I would leave it up to staff to perform that, would be my recommendation.
Thank you. Any other, yes.
Thank you. Yes, I was invited here to answer just the one particular part, but I would ask that if I could make some general comments because I actually got to read this.
Please.
Okay, I guess first off, I guess just question as to the definition portion. So I'm starting at the beginning and just going down, just making some notes. I guess as far as definition goes, we have data center, then you have data center with air quotes. So it's like, what are we going to call this? And then, of course, crypto. So I guess my question or observation is that, if it's going to be a legitimate data center, that through the planning process, that they should identify themselves with either their certification or standard that they're going for to be a legitimate data center. Whether it's the ISO 27001, the SSAE 16, the ISAE 3402, the IEC 22237, some type of standard, because again, it could be a mechanism where you identify yourself as something to try to circumvent a process. With that said, going down for Part B, noise, I guess the question is, for the noise study, would that include the possibility or the findings with any on-site generators running, whether or not that adds to the decibels or cancels? Because again, a legitimate data center is a 24/7 operation, so you have a higher propensity for generators to be running as opposed to something that's just claiming to be a data center or something other than a data center that may or may not be running. With that, I guess Section B, Part 5, in regards to backup electrical supply during power outages, I guess the other little wrinkle with data centers, or at least these large purchase powers, that they have curtailments or voluntary shutdowns. So whether or not they would argue that a voluntary shutdown or a curtailment is an outage for the definition of being able to run a generator or not, that would be something that I would recommend that you dig a little deeper on. Part C, hazardous waste plan. I guess the question is that, it says prior to approval of the developer. I guess the situations when the developer is not necessarily the end user, if a project is being built as, for example, a spec or a turnkey operation, where the developer may or may not actually have the information that we're requiring for the process. And just as some examples, again, going into the wastewater side a little bit, that, when you take the boilers out of service, how are those drained? What's the composite of the liquid in the boilers? Is it glycol? Is it water? Is it stored, reused, poured down? So, and I guess with that, some of the recent projects that came through, we made requests as far as, whether they actually provide SDS sheets. Again, if it's just a spec builder, that they don't necessarily have the answers to the questions, which in turn goes to Section A, verification of the electronic waste. Is that strictly the computer equipment itself, or does that include the immersion technology that those devices are in? Is it corn oil? Is it mineral oil? Is it water? Is it evaporative? Which again, we've made requests to a couple of these last companies, and the answers we've got back is we don't know what we're using yet. And of course, that, sets the tone or direction for what's required. As we get into the water and wastewater plan, I guess one thing that I would recommend that you add is that prior to approval, that the developer, user, whoever actually applies for a sewer extension permit through the MCPA, the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, because that would actually generate or force them to provide more information to the city, as well as the environmental review, pre-screenings, and some of the other parts of a process. Okay, and then I guess as far as the screening, whether or not that the screens for the adjacent public rights-of-way and everything, if that screening compromises the clearances around equipment for maintenance, that if the, if it's a transformer or some device that, before you put the screening in, you can actually service it or work on it, given some situations, or if the screening would compromise that. So again, I guess an extra part of the review process. Finally, again, I guess the energy standards, that was kind of a unique or a standout thing as far as what you would expect to see for a planning or an ordinance, the actual power portfolio for that. But in keeping with or mirroring the other sections of the plan, I would suggest something similar to, and again, to assist with EDA and planning and zoning, something to the effect of prior to approval, that loads over 1 megawatt in capacity will be responsible for having a system impact study completed by the appropriate power transmission owner operator in the area. That way, everybody is cognizant of any power constraints, or if that's any additional timelines required for construction or upgrades to the transmission lines coming into the city.
Excellent.
And I can answer any other questions or any other comments. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is that kind of list that you have there something you can share with James, and we can kind of, and I guess a question for James too. What's the action you're asking for of us tonight, if any, and are these suggestions we can kind of maybe consider incorporating?
So, when staff put this together, looked at a number of ordinances, you know, kind of around Minnesota and around the country. We could certainly work with Brainerd Public Utilities further to potentially incorporate some of these. At times, zoning code doesn't get as specific with that, and you work with departments for approvals. So I think maybe there's some things that need to be added, and you know, maybe some things are just something that's done when you're, you know, kind of speaking with Brainerd Public Utilities on, you know, kind of a final approval with some of these things. So, you know, if we are interested in adding some of these and having more dialogue, we're probably not ready at this point to move forward with a public hearing at the next meeting.
Okay. Questions, comments, on some of maybe the comments you've heard, or?
Well, Mr. Chair, if I may, we have quite a few new people on this, and two of the ones that have been here a while are gone. So I think it makes it very hard, in fairness to everyone else that's here about this. And honestly, I think it needs to be more generalized and go, a lot of this information in this ordinance literally needs to go back to staff almost before it comes to the planning commission, in my mind. They're the ones that know, you know, by just what you were stating tonight, some of the things that we'd have to research and go deep into, which I don't think we're really qualified to do that, to be quite honest with you. So I think this plan, the ordinance, should be more generalized in our aspect of it, and so that it's more defined when it comes to us, I guess. This is allowed, this is the area they want to put it in. Are you okay with that?
Any other comments, questions kind of to that effect? And so I guess just given that feedback, and I tend to agree, you know, partially from what we've heard tonight from BPU, could we maybe push it off one?
Yeah, so maybe what
incorporates
what we could do is I could work further with Chris and from a staff perspective, you know, we can make recommendations to maybe add things if it's not super different from what it is, but it's just maybe a little bit more specific. We could potentially hold a public hearing at the next meeting. If staff does think that it's changing too much, maybe we hold off and have the planning commission review it. So I think kind of giving an option to staff to, you know, if we're just making things a little more specific, we could maybe bring it back. But if we're adding, you know, a lot of additional language, then we just bring it back for more discussion.
Yeah, and I think your point about new members, I think is a fair judgment. It just gives us a little bit more time to kind of digest that.
Yep.
Before moving forward to a public hearing. Thank you. Thank you. Any action on that tonight then, or just that would just be it to kind of table it? Do you need a motion to that effect? Or?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right. Moving on then, 9, on the revised agenda here, 9B, Review Planning Commission Yearly Itinerary. James.
Yep, so as we're finishing up on the crypto mining, data center, AI center kind of portion of that, mainly called the data center ordinance, staff is looking for direction from the planning commission on kind of the next work items to work on. Obviously, the letter was included from the DNR that our shoreline management regulations need to be updated, specifically for the uses that are defined in there. However, they did note too that this hasn't been looked at for, I think, over 20 plus years. So staff would like to begin working on that. It is quite a long ordinance, so it's something that will take probably a couple of months before it'd be in front of the planning commission for a review. I think this would work, hand in hand with one of the sections that staff would really like to review as well, which is the allowed use table. Now that I've been in the position of community development director for a couple of years and have come across different uses in a variety of zoning districts, I think looking at this to see, what are the real impacts to surrounding neighborhoods, businesses versus what aren't, what has too much of a regulatory process, what can be maybe scaled back. I think this would be, could go hand in hand well with looking at those uses in the shoreline district as well. So working on that in conjunction, and then I think working in conjunction as well is the industrial off-street parking requirements. I know this is something that's kind of a top priority that I've heard from some council members about so right now in most of our parking areas, and all of our parking areas, we require it to be either concrete or asphalt, except really in residential zoning districts next to alleys. So within the industrial off-street parking requirements, say existing businesses have a gravel parking lot that's behind, or their whole business is gravel, and they want to add on to it, they would not be able to add on class 5 to it because the code would require pavement to it. So I think allowing in our industrial park, some nuances to this would also help businesses expand as well. We went on an EDA visit to Giovanni's Pizza in town. They predominantly have a class 5 parking area, and they want a little turnaround at the back of it. And certainly looking at ways that the city could help them on that part of it. Changing the ordinance for allowing a little bit of a turnaround area would certainly be helpful to where they wouldn't have to then pave that. So with that, staff's looking for direction to really start digging in and working on those 3 next sections, and probably wouldn't be anything in front of the planning commission at the next meeting, but kind of things would be subsequently done in the next few months to begin working on it. So looking for direction, and then if there's anything else that planning commission members would like to add to it, we can certainly do that as well.
Okay, thanks, James. So from the longer list, essentially you kind of broken that down into those 4 main prioritized categories. Is that accurate?
Yep, so I did order it based on what staff's recommendation would be. And then we do have it in the budget to do an update on the comprehensive plan. But based on what the DNR had said in their letter, needing to update our shoreline ordinance and then doing the allowed use table, I do think that needs to probably come before the comprehensive plan. And then the comprehensive plan would probably start sometime midsummer.
Okay. Comments on that? Questions? Again, a lot of new members, but this would be a good opportunity to kind of refocus and prioritize going forward. So, you looking for a motion on that? You said
Probably with a motion if you're good with what staff has ordered here.
I would say it has the March 19th for the public hearing. So obviously with that change, then be looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion to support that.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. All right, that brings us to item number 10, public forum. Anyone either in person or online who would like to speak on items not on the agenda? Anyone for public forum for items not on the agenda? And last call, hearing none. Brings us to 11, staff reports.
Yeah, so I just have one update for the Planning Commission tonight. So the EDA held a special meeting last Friday. Block Metrics, which is looking to purchase the property that VCV has, is updating or wanted an update on their purchase and development agreement, essentially to make a slight adjustment to the construction plans with it. So they kind of flipped where the building was. There's potential, if they have power, to add a 9th cooler unit to that, as well as the data miners themselves. So that was approved by the EDA to move forward with that. They are, building permits have not been turned in yet, but they have been in contact with staff. So it is looking like that they are going to be developing the property. But again, the building permits have not yet been turned in.
Okay, and is that something that we can expect on our next agenda, or is that something?
Nope, that's just kind of an update. Until the data center ordinance is actually in place, there's no review by the Planning Commission.
Okay, thank you. And you said just the one item? Go around, any updates? Other Administrator Broyles, Mr. Evans? Okay, thank you. Other staff, Stephanie? Sean? All right, thank you very much. And I think that brings us, to the end? Commissioner member reports?
I never say anything, but I've got more homework for my new guys here too. Since we're going through these table of contents and stuff, I'd like to see or hear what everybody thinks of. I turned you off. What everybody thinks of, we're looking at a lot of architectural standards. I'd like you to come back and your report next month is, what is your favorite looking building, business building in the city of Brainerd? And then what style of residential house do you like? Is it log? Is it, modern? I'm just curious, it's more of a curiosity on my point to see what's out there because we have run the gamut in town. And we're keep focusing and pushing one way or the other. But I'm just curious, that's all. That's a homework for everyone.
Thank you. All right. Commissioner Higgins, anything to add?
Not at this time.
Priscilla?
Next time. All the whole meeting.
Nothing to add.
All right, thank you. Well, thanks for letting me run the meeting for one night and one night only, and look forward to getting the full commission back and working with the rest of you. So welcome aboard. So with that, I think that brings us right to the end, isn't it? We will adjourn 7:39. Thank you.